Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Kieran Walshe from Accuplex Diagnostics, and the last speaker just mentioned point-of-care diagnostics and the involvement and the application of horses. That's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give a brief introduction about EquiCheck SAA. It's a tool for changing how, when, where trainers, owners, and vets manage inflammation infection. In a nutshell, it's information detection made simple, and the device we're going to show you is this little one here. Now, the challenges, well, I think it's fair to say that a horse ain't doing right or a horse is not performing well is a diagnostic challenge. You don't know what's going on. But there's other challenges that we see as well, is how to take information and put it into the hands of a vet or an owner or a trainer when they need it, right beside the horse, and that's where point-of-care technology comes in. The challenge is, how do you take tests that are done traditionally in a laboratory and put them into a format that can be done in point-of-care? And that's what our expertise is. So if you have a fast-moving inflammatory condition, we all know it can affect the health and performance of a horse. It's critical. We also know that early diagnosis is key. The sooner you can get the problem, the sooner you can treat it. The problem is, if you take traditional blood tests, and for inflammation infection, their white blood cells and their fibrinogen, SAA molecule come onto a second. But these tests are done in the laboratory. So if you think about it, if you're beside the lab, it's not a problem. You can get a result back quite quickly. But for an awful lot of vets especially, they're out during the day. They may be traveling 40, 50 miles. They may see several horses. They may take blood samples. You've got to get back to the office in the afternoon or late evening. If they have a lab, they can run the test then, or they run them the following morning. If they don't have a lab, they've got to send one to somebody else. So there's a delay in getting a decision. And that creates problems. If you can make that decision at the point of care, it gives you information that gives you valuable information at the time. So chasing a fast-moving problem with a slow solution. Now, I'm going to give a little bit on the science here, and we asked the question, why SAA and what is SAA? But at the end of the next 3 slides, I hope for somebody who don't know what it is, you know what it is. So I'm going to put that information up there. And if you just look at the arrow on the left-hand side here, if you have an inflammatory condition, such as an infection, it causes a tissue injury. And what actually happens in a tissue injury is that the body responds and it produces a series of biomolecules, technically they're called cytokines or interleukins, and they get they're shot out into the blood system. The problem with these is they don't hang around for very long. They only stay in the blood system for a period of hours, and then they disappear. The other problem with these is that they occur at very low levels that you can really only analyze in a laboratory using sophisticated equipment. So they're very good research tools, and they are being used in research in the equine industry, and they give valuable information, but they're not practically useful as a point-of-care diagnostic. It would be very difficult to take that and package it in a way that you could use right beside the horse. But the good news about the cytokines is that they go on and they actually head to the liver. And in the liver, they stimulate what's called an acute phase response. And an acute phase response is where the liver now gets switched on and it starts producing proteins, say this one here, and fibrinogen, that are just not there. Now, just to deal with fibrinogen first, that's considered, it's a traditional biomarker of inflammation in horses, and it's used routinely. But it is a minor and a slow acute phase protein. In other words, it's already floating around in the blood system, so there's background levels there. And the second thing is, it doesn't really rise very much when there is a problem. It might double, it might treble. In rare situations, it might go up further. So it doesn't really rise that much, and it also responds quite slowly. On the other side, you've got this molecule here called SAA, and its name is serum amyloid A. It's a major and a fast-moving acute phase protein. Major because it actually goes up from very, very low levels, 10-fold, 100-fold, and even 1,000-fold when it's a problem. And it's usually 100 to 1,000-fold in the range it goes up. So it goes up relative to fibrinogen, it goes up significantly higher, and it also goes up extremely fast. So we look at this next slide. This is just a theoretical example of actually how it works. So on the left-hand side, we've got the relative response rate. On the bottom here, we've got the time of response and the duration of response. And then we have a situation where you have a horse with a problem. And all of a sudden, an infection occurs at this day here, day 0. So here we actually have a white blood cell response, and fibrinogen be somewhat similar. The response is not very big, and then with the white blood cells, when the infection actually drops and then goes back up again. So there's maybe a time frame within which you're not quite sure what's going on. But the other issue is the white blood cells, they don't rise very high. In contrast, something like serum amyloid A, it goes up very, very quickly, and it goes up very, very high. And then you come to the situation, okay, now we decide there's a problem and you want to treat. And what happens to the treatment, if it's effective, you can see that the response with the serum amyloid A, it comes down very, very quickly when it gets back down to normal again. Whereas the white blood cells, they may still continue to rise a little bit, but you see the relative response is different. So the magnitude response is one important thing why SAA is actually very good. And the relative speed, not just which comes down, but also when it goes up, is also another very important feature why SAA is a particularly good molecule to work with. Now, that was a theoretical example. This one here is a real-time example of actually how this might be used in the field. And this was a study that was done in the US a couple of years ago, in which they looked at about 200 horses coming into a clinic. I think it was 220 horses. And what they did was actually they segregated horses into those that were normal and those that had a clinical problem, a lot of whom actually had an underlying inflammatory condition. And this here, you can see, this is the white blood cell count on the normal and the abnormal horses. And you can see the white blood cell count. There's always a spread of the white blood cells, a range, I forget the exact numbers, I think it's 5 to about 19, 20,000 cells per mil. But you can see there's a spread around the normal range. Now, if you look at the abnormal range, you can see the white blood cells have gone up in some of the cases. But if you look at the overlap, there's a significant overlap between the two groups there. So while the white blood cells may be giving you information, and they do, you also get situations where you're not quite sure what's going on. And if you have a horse, for example, where its level is here in the normal situation, and there is a condition going on, it might actually rise in the normal range, so you could be masking what's actually happening there. If you take fibrinogen, the second one they looked at in the study, again, you have the normal healthy horses here, and you have the abnormal horses here. So again, you can see there's quite a range, a spread of the range of the fibrinogen in the normal healthy population. And on the right-hand side here, you can see that the fibrinogen, it has gone up in some of the horses, but again, a bit like the white blood cells, there's a big overlap in the levels. So you may not necessarily get the information you want at the time when you need it. Now, on the right-hand side, we have serum amyloid A. And you can see here that the level of serum amyloid A is actually, it's very, very low. And it's non-existent in some horses, but it can rise to maybe 15, 20 microgram per mil. But on the right-hand side, you can see where there's an inflammatory condition, it's gone up significantly. And while you might have some horses where there's no response there, likewise in here, there may be no inflammatory condition. Where there is a problem, the SAA is now giving you a very, very clear-cut result. So it's actually adding information that these two here may not be giving you. So what did we do? Well, my background is in product development, and I've worked in making tests for the lab years ago, and it's moved into developing point-of-care technology then as technology developed. So we looked at, well, what tests, not just this one, what tests can you take that can be done in the lab, but could also be translated into a point-of-care technology? And we came up with this first one, EquiCheck SAA, for monitoring serum amyloid A in blood. And it's called a lateral flow device. It's a bit like a pregnant test device. We're using kind of platforms there. The device is just about, that's about the size of it now. It's an established technology. So our test, it works on whole blood. So the idea behind this was, how do you take a lab test that requires staff and sophisticated equipment and put it into a format that's simple and easy to use with minimal steps that will still give you valuable information? So this test works with whole blood, so there's no sample dilution, and it's simple to use. It's rapid in that you can get a result within it's a 10-minute test, but when you're running the test, you can actually see results within 3 minutes. And the way it works, you just take a small finger prick volume of blood, you add it onto the sample port here, you add 3 drops of a chase from a drop bottle, and then you wait. And you can just see up here, lines will appear on test. Now that's actually speeded up. It's you can start seeing those come up in about 3 minutes. So there's no special equipment required. That's it. Just get your blood, add it on, add a few drops of liquid and wait a few minutes. So it's literally a point of care technology. You can do it anywhere at any time. You can bring it with you no matter where you go. So you don't necessarily have to have a lab when you have a problem. Now, in terms of actually how do you use the test and how do you interpret it? Now, there's a lot of information up here on the slide here, but if you look on the left-hand side here, a normal healthy horse will produce a response like this. You'll get 4 clear bands coming up within 2-3 minutes and very clear at the 10 minutes. The only reason I say take 10 minutes is actually it's a red dye, this material here. It's a red dye that runs up and it takes about 10 minutes for it to clear completely, but those lines become very clear within about 2-3 minutes. If you look at the extreme right-hand side here, this is a blood sample from a horse where there was a significant clinical problem, that's an infection. And you can see there's only one line coming up here. And intermediate, you can see there are lines here. So unlike a yes-no type test, like a pregnancy test or a test for an infectious disease, it's either there or it's not. This is a semi-quantitative test, so it gives you an indication of the relative level of SA that might be there in a blood sample. So you may get situations where there's 2 lines or 3 lines there, and that's actually tell you that there's a mild to moderate inflammatory condition. So if you actually catch a horse where it's actually with, say, 2 lines, 3 lines coming up there, you know there's something maybe going on. You might decide, I'm going to wait another 12 hours to see what's actually happening, because this protein goes up in the blood within 12 hours. And by 24 hours, it may have peaked. So if you're not sure what's actually happening, and you actually have a relatively mild inflammatory condition going on there, you might wait another 12 hours to find out what's actually happening, or you might decide I'm going to act on it now. If you're on the other side where the horse has got a problem, you know it's got a problem, you're treating it, you can actually monitor the recovery as well. So if you remember the previous slide, we had the up peak, you can see it going up, and if you want to monitor treatment, you actually monitor it coming down the other way again. So in terms of uses, well, we've actually broke it down to 3 different areas. You've got checking health status, monitoring recovery, and then how does it help support diagnostic decisions? So in terms of where can it be used? Well, certainly a big use is where there's suspicion. For example, there's something not right with the horse, so you suspect there's infection, and especially in foals, we find it actually prove very useful in there. Assurance before big events, where you may just want to know is the horse in pristine condition before it's actually going anywhere, or if it's in pristine condition by the time it's arrived, especially on travel. I know there's one of the previous speakers was talking about fertility in horses and pregnancy. Well, certainly placentitis is a problem which can affect horses, and I think it was highlighted that for the older or later on in the gestation period, infection was one of the problems that can cause foal loss. And placentitis is a problem. It can be caused by infection, and SAA is a good biomarker to indicate there is an infectious disease there. And another area that we've actually found it can be useful for, this last one, is actually not only does serum amyloid occur in the blood, but it also occurs in the joint fluid, in the synovial fluid. So if you actually have a horse where there's a problem going on there, and you actually take the synovial fluid and put it onto the test, and you finish up with 1 line, you can be pretty certain that it's a septic arthritis, so you have to come in and intervene with antibiotics. If it's a chronic inflammatory condition, like such as osteoarthritis, the serum amyloid won't go up. So you can actually help distinguish between the presence of infection and or not in the joint fluid. In terms of monitoring recovery, well, I think you saw on the previous slide that if a treatment is effective, you can actually monitor the fall, decline of the serum amyloid back to normal. So you can actually help decide when to and it's a growing application of using these types of proteins in the human medical field as well, to when to cease treatment for antibiotics and start rehabilitation. So how you support diagnostic decisions? Well, certainly you're not going to use this on its own. You will use it in conjunction with other clinical information. It's like white blood cells. You don't make a decision on its own. You do combine all the information, and this is no different. When to stop a treatment, when to run and when to rest. If the SAA is up and you've got a horse in a performance horse or an eventing horse, and you want to decide, well, maybe I should give it a break, or there's something actually going on here, you can actually use to help make that decision. But another area we find is use as well is in biosecurity. If you have moving a horse from one location to another, or you're bringing a horse into the stables, and there is a sniff, or there is maybe a nasal discharge, or you have suspicion might be something wrong, and you run the test and you come up with 1 line, you know you made a decision to quarantine that horse before you mix it with the others. So why does it matter? Well, I think the most important thing about this slide here is actually the one on the right-hand side. It's a red flag. If you're running a blood sample from a horse and you get one line, you know there's a problem. It's a red flag. You've got to take further action. But also, why it matters, well, it might actually help make a decision of what way to treat. So, for example, we have a situation where a horse comes in, it's got a cough. Is it an asthmatic response or is there an infection going on there? Well, if it's an asthmatic response, it doesn't cause an increase in the serum amyloid. So you know, and these are situations that we've got talking to vets, so decide to treat with steroids. If, on the other hand, there's a cough going on and there may be nasal discharge, so there may not be, and the test comes up with one line, that's an indication it's probably an infection, so you treat with antibiotics. It can help me in that judgment call. So it's actually giving you, it's evidence-based treatment choices, where it matters, right beside the horse. Remember, you don't have to bring that blood sample back to the lab and wait 12 hours or the following day to go back out again. So in some respects, it's kind of helping you fast recovery, reducing risk and reducing the cost. And it's not just the economic cost, it's the physical cost to the animal because you're getting a faster decision. So for trainers, and this is where our message is, right now we're bringing this product to vets, but we're increasingly getting out there or trying to introduce now into the hands of the trainers as well. And we have a couple of early adopters. This is Noel Mead in Ireland. He's been using it now for the last 12 months, and he uses it on a regular basis when he's assessing horses, especially when he thinks something not quite right or it's not performing up to scratch. He'll actually run that test in, and he actually might use that as a way to kind of call in the vet. So our take-home message is, why wait? EquiCheck it. Thank you.